Oh, where'd Justin go?
I didn't say a word.
Oh, there he is. There he is. All right.
What happened?
How did I get backstage?
You must have hit something.
Oh, sure.
You know who's in charge,
Hey, a shout out to Bent's Camp up in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. I was up there a couple weeks ago. There was a lady came up and mentioned this show, and she watched it in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. That just goes to tell you, never know where we're reaching. But
that's awesome.
If you've been to Land O'Lakes, there's not much other than watch this show or drink. So whatever it is. But Bent's Camp, Land O'Lakes, if you're in the area, go to see it. So welcome,
all the more reason
everybody.
to watch this show if you got somebody drinking in your life.
It goes connection right there.
No wonder. Yeah, no wonder we're getting some play in Land O'Lakes.
Wow, what an honor too to bring on Kevin Peterson, the family whisperer himself, to the Intervention on Call family. This is a big deal. Like,
welcome.
It's kind of like, Aaron Judge coming over, playing for like the Dodgers or something. This is a big signing.
I just feel like I got called up to the majors. That's all.
Well, you won't think that for long, but
yeah,
anyway,
manage those expectations, Kevin.
Matt and Justin, old-time friends, welcome. Just another show. Thank you for everyone for chiming in. If you have a question, feel free. Type it in the comments. If you're watching a replay of this, type it in the comments. We'll get to it every week. We do this every Tuesday. I just been on vacation in La La Land. I just been in my own little world the last couple of weeks. So when I'm on vacation, they don't, nothing happens. So these guys had to beg me to come back. So we do this every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. Was it 4 with you, Matt, on the West Coast?
Yeah, but I mean, you are the glue that holds us together. Let's not be unclear about that.
Well, anyway.
The straw that stirs the drink.
That's right.
I said that, and 10 people just got off the line. So anyway, I won't take that personal. So let's get right into it. All right. We organized a family meeting with our whole family to help out our 24-year-old son. We all were crying except for our addicted son. We don't show emotion as a family, but nothing got through. This goes on, ultimately asking, like, what do they do wrong? Whatever it may be. Let's do the rookie first. Kevin Peterson. What do you got for this person?
Well, good for you for doing the whole thing, organizing the family meeting. Now, the first question I have is that, did you do this on your own, or did you have a professional with you? Because it just makes a huge difference, and but we'll just push that aside because we'll never get an answer on that one.
It was by themselves. I can tell you that.
Okay. So I always tell folks and families that I really think they're always going to have a better chance of success of having like one of you three gentlemen with them talking through the whole process. But here's the thing, and I think this is critical, and this was my experience actually, was I sat there and listened. I just gave them the hard face and the stone face, and it took a little bit while longer, but the message got through, number one. And number two, my big specialty is now you hold your boundaries, and now you keep it clean and keep it clear that we love you, and the answer is no, and no to everything, and that if you want help, we will of course move heaven and earth to get you help. But if you're going to continue your drug and alcohol lifestyle, the answer is no, and we'll respect your choices. That I have found in time will eventually bring him over to your side of the street. That's my thoughts.
Matt Brown, we got some emotion from an emotionally numb family. They cried, except for the addicted individual. What do you got?
Well, I always want to talk to families about how to measure success. And the expression of emotion in and of itself, while it could be very cathartic and it could be very meaningful for some people in the room, it's not a metric of success in a case like this. And so what we really have to take notice of more than anything is did the right action get taken? Obviously, in this case, from what the you shared with us gives us, it doesn't sound like it did. And so the goal is to get that person into action. The amount of emotion that gets shared, it's not that it's inconsequential. I mean, this is a very emotionally charged event where families sit down trying to save one of their loved ones. But to really look at this and say, okay, what do we need to say, not just to get through and let them feel something, but what do we need to say to get them into action? And oftentimes that really doesn't necessarily mean that there's a display of emotion. It just means that that person's got to be moving in the right direction. And if the family doesn't understand that, if the family can't construct that experience, then it's better to not try, at least in that moment. They need some guidance. They need some help to get this meeting focused on a more specific goal. Sometimes going in and talking with someone is just, hey, we need you to recognize that you've got a problem. We need you to, agree to get help at some point in the future. And, if I'm that person, like Kevin was saying, like I can either shut down and stonewall the whole experience. The other thing I could do is maybe just agree to whatever it is you want. Hey guys, this sounds like a great idea. You know what? I think I will do this. I think I will move forward, and I do have a problem, and I will get some help at some point in the future. So long as I don't have to make any changes today, I can shut that down pretty quickly. And so it's important. It's really imperative that the family has a goal, an outcome that everybody has agreed to ahead of time to really be able to say, okay, this is what we want to see happen at the end of this meeting. This is where what kind of change we want this person to engage into. And that's the purpose of an intervention. It's not a confession. It's not an admission. It's action.
Justin Deal.
Yeah, so a couple of cases come to mind from, over the years. I led one intervention where, everybody in the room was crying except for the identified individual. And especially when his daughter went, I actually kind of had to, think of the actually 1982 Milwaukee Brewers, so that I didn't lose my professionalism and start crying also, because her letter was so impactful. And after everybody went and he said no, I actually said, were you really listening to the words? Because there wasn't a dry eye in this room other than yours and mine. And it wasn't my daughter. And so I had her read her letter again. And that question, I guess, was enough to penetrate him really listening the second time, because, there is that surprise and immediately the Johnson model of shock and awe. Part of that is so that the disease can't get its walls up and we will be able to be heard. And this guy was so far along that his walls went up and he didn't hear anybody. But after he listened to his daughter's second time, he agreed to get help. Another thing that comes to mind is from the question, did they actually read letters, or were they emotional and just sobbing, and exactly what was their message? And that's another reason to kind of echo Kevin. Important to have a professional there. I mentioned it multiple times during the planning meeting. You've got to write a letter, partly because if you get emotional, or when you get emotional, I don't want you to lose your train of thought or the message. And if they were too emotional, if there is such a thing, then their son isn't hearing what the real request is.
Justin, just so you know, there's been times in my life that I've had to think about baseball too. Not
I don't
during
know.
an intervention.
I don't
but-
know when you had a rock placed in front of your heart, but I mean, if you truly were thinking of the 82 Brewers, you would cry. That was our chance. That was the team. I'm just telling you that, you don't have a heart. You have a rock. It's good to know that. But anyway, I just got to say that because the 82, I mean, I teared up just, anyway, I'll be all right. Anyway, Justin, let's go on to the next one because I'm flustered. My brother is a successful lawyer. His alcohol abuse has severed any relationship he has with us siblings. Our father died of alcoholism. Mother died trying to love him too much. Kevin, you must love that. We have no leverage. So this was again, I'm only allowed a certain number of characters within the question. So this is a long, long question. Ultimately, we're talking about someone that's their siblings. There's a sister and 2 older brothers. They're talking about their successful brother. He's drinking himself. There's signs that he's not as successful as he once was. They say he never goes to certain bargain places and stuff. He's used to the fancy life. Now they're seeing Dollar General, and so nothing against Dollar General, but see, there's signs there that he's not as successful as once. So the question ultimately is, you got someone that's kind of severed ties from the family, is out on his own, has their own finances. Justin, what do you got?
Well, the intervention, from my perspective, is 51% for the people that are worried about the individual. And it is supposed to be a controlled environment for their voice to be heard. And, I had another case where, it wasn't a successful lawyer, but it was a trust fund. And the family had looked into everything that they could do to stop the monthly stipend, and it was pretty much impossible. They asked, they intervened, they asked, he said no. They couldn't impose any financial discomfort on him, and he was still doing fine. And I said, we're going to go have, a post-intervention family meeting and discuss how we move forward. He wanted to know what that entailed. I said, by saying no to going and seeing if you have a problem, you're telling your family you don't really want to be a part of this family. You'd rather keep on this lifestyle. And during the post-intervention meeting, he did exactly what I said he would do. He called his younger sister, thinking she was the weak link in the chain. She said, unless you're calling to get help, we've got nothing more important to talk about. And she hung up. 15 seconds later, he called the dad and said, fine, I'll go. You don't want to minimize the power of being part of a family. But, it's also important that you have that voice heard, because that's what you have power over.
Kevin, brothers successful. You got the siblings. You got mom and dad. That obviously, dad died of alcoholism. Mother kind of broken heart, called codependency. Where do you deal with it from a family perspective?
Well, the thing I would say initially is that I disagree with that we have no leverage. I get this all the time with families. We're like, he's 18. We've lost all our control. I'm like, oh God, that's totally not true. I was 27. My parents sat me down and said, we love you, but we don't believe a word out of your mouth. You're a liar, cheat, and a thief. And, you're an alcoholic and a drug addict. And we know you didn't graduate from college. But I had my own house, my own car, my own job. I had no financial ties to them. What they were saying, and this is sort of the repetitive theme that you always get from me, Jay, is we love you, but we're not going to stand back and watch you kill yourself. And if you're going to choose to kill yourself, you're an adult, that's your choice, but you're going to do it without us. So what I tell families is every day you got to think about this. Every day you wake up and you open the front door, and along comes the car from a roller coaster, and you have a choice. You can get on or you can just let it go. And the hardest thing families do is just let the thing go with the addict or the alcoholic without them, because they're just like, yeah, we're not going to participate. But as soon as they want to get off, we will give them all the help they need. But that actually is your leverage, because my family held their ground for 6 weeks and they wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't engage with me, and they wouldn't put up with my crap. And I did what all tough guy alcoholics did. I called mom and started crying, like, oh, dad's mean. You guys don't love me. This is so unfair. And they were ready for that. That was part of the plan, and they're like, well, if you start seeing a therapist with your dad, I think we might be able to lighten up. I'm like, therapist, no problem. And I did. And that's what led me to getting sober. So I disagree with the concept we don't have any leverage. I think it's horrible that your dad died as an alcoholic. I'm really sad about your mom, but you have the opportunity to implement change in your family system right now by contacting one of these three incredible gentlemen. Read my book first, Chronic Hope, Families and Addiction. Maybe give me a call and we can talk about how to lay out the plan, and then we'll bring in an excellent interventionist and sit down and have the conversation. And like Justin was just saying, intervention is really more for the family's benefit, to be totally blunt, and just be like, we just want to be clear, we're not doing this anymore. By the way, when my dad said that to me, we're 5 minutes into a 4-hour car ride. I was like, I'm trapped. And he didn't let up, man. And he made it clear. And the fact that and every addict and alcoholic has this experience. Oh God, this again. But they held their ground. And that was the difference. This time they didn't cave. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. The one thing I can always count on is having my family's love and acceptance of my stupid behavior. And when they're like, no, but when you want to get smart, we'll be happy to hang out with you. So that's my 2 cents.
One of the biggest lies we tell, addiction tells us, is that we're only affecting ourselves in the midst of addiction. And I think, I love what you said, Kevin. I think sometimes I even forget that, the love and the, standing the ground, the boundaries are all leverage in itself. And it just lets the addict, the alcoholic, who, know that there's love out there. There's love for it. And I don't know your family story, but there's love there, but it's also, they're been affected. It's not just me that's being that. When I finally totally grasped the idea that my family was going through some things, it wasn't just me destroying my life, meant the world. And I think, interventions, all this whole process, talking with, family counselors, therapy, whatever, interventions, all, I think you learn that it's not just you that you're affecting. Matt Brown, what do you got?
These guys have really covered it all. I think the only thing that I would add to this, one of the comments was, his drinking has severed, I forget the exact words, but basically severed the relationships.
Yep.
And I would challenge that and say, okay, is it him that's distanced himself from you, or have you distanced yourself from him? Because that's really, when you don't have that leverage, sometimes the leverage is not what can I take away from you, or what can I stop doing to enable you, or what do I have to change so that I'm putting distance between me and you to protect myself. Sometimes the leverage is, I want a relationship with you. I want to be closer with you. I miss you. And your drinking has pushed this away. It's robbed us both of this experience that we could have been having together. Let's fight for that together. And it's not, hey, you're pushing me away. This is all you're the perpetrator here. I'm the victim. And you've taken away, this relationship. Sometimes it's really just about fighting to get that closeness and that connection again. And that's where we find the leverage. And the other thing, of course, being that he's a successful lawyer, you can always go the route of his license, to state the obvious, to be able to say, hey, listen, if you don't get some help, we understand that this is your ability to practice ethically and honestly, and to be able to serve your clients. And we may have to report you to the bar and have you investigated and have your license suspended. And sometimes I know There was a really amazing guy, Louis Lecter in Austin, Texas. When I lived in Austin, he was a man in recovery. If I'm not telling his story for him here, I don't think he'd mind me saying that. But he was the guy for the Texas Bar Association. Anytime there was an attorney in trouble, Louis was the one to step in and get them help. And in most states, my experience is that if you are a licensed medical professional, a licensed legal professional, they don't want to see you lose your license. They may put you on probation to have a little bit of skin in the game, but most of the time, these organizations have systems in place to support impaired professionals. And oftentimes, you don't even have to go the route of hiring an interventionist. You can do that, and not that you want to necessarily make it punitive, but I can't tell you how many doctors or attorneys or nurses or any other professionals that have a license that has to be protected have been able to get into recovery because at one point they put their license in jeopardy.
Amen. We were talking about trust funds and kind of stuff. This hits home to me. It's something we lost our father last year, and in his will, he stated that my 31-year-old sister is unable to receive her inheritance until she is 40 years old. Main reason being her drug addiction. You got the older brother who's the executor of the will. You got 31-year-old sister clamoring, begging for that shot of inheritance. This is the executor of the will, the older brother, looking for guidance as to what's their option. They've brought up treatment numerous times, according to the email, the question. But as far as the executor, Matt, we'll start with you. What kind of options he's looking for? Kind of options or suggestions?
Well, first of all, I'd love to get the phone number for the attorney who did the estate planning here. I think this is brilliant, and I think this is an opportunity that a lot of families don't consider, in that you put kind of a sobriety clause in the will or in the trust or whatever it's going to be, so that if a person has a history of addiction or mental health issues or any of the above, there's some protections in there to prevent that trust or the will, whatever the financial outcome of that event might be, from enabling that person to kill themselves. And to have the forethought to be able to say, you know what, upon my death, I could continue to be enabling my daughter financially, eventually, and it could be to her peril, to be able to have the forethought to prevent that from happening, I think it's an act of love. And I don't know that, I mean, certainly if I were in her shoes, I don't think I'd see it that way. I want to party like it's 1999, but it's one of those things that I think more families ought to give consideration to, and that, it always goes back to those two questions that I have families ask themselves. Am I enabling this? Am I being harmed by this? And if either of those answers are yes, I've got to change my behavior so that I'm no longer contributing to this, or so that I'm no longer being harmed in a way that I could prevent. And so I think that the only thing that maybe I would change in that, instead of just having it hard and fast at 40 years old, maybe have a stipulation in there that, once they do get to 12 months or 24 months or 18 months of recovery, that the executor at their discretion could start to distribute those funds. Because, not that I think people's recovery should be financially motivated, but to be able to say, my life could get better fairly quickly if I were to get sober. Whatever somebody's motivation is for getting sober, most of the time it's an external motivator, whether it's, a legal consequence, a medical consequence, a relationship consequence. Most of us wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I need to get sober today. I'd really love a sober life, and so at some point, because of the experiences we have as we are newly sober, and we make that choice, oh, okay, I want to do this for me now, that motivation shifts. And so, not that I want to entice someone into recovery. Doing an intervention, I never want to put it out there like, hey, if they go to treatment, I want you to pay off all their debt. I want you to buy them a new house, a new car. That's not ever what I say in an intervention. I don't want somebody to feel enticed to get sober. But in a case like this, where that's something that's at 40 years old is going to happen anyway, to be able to say, you know what, if you were to get sober before that, we can consider maybe an alternative. Maybe we could accelerate that timeline a little bit. I think that that can give somebody the opportunity to have an experience that might change their view on recovery.
It's still in the will for me. Like, I was not going to get my money until I was 50 years old. And my dad just said, like, I asked him, I didn't know about it until, several years sober. Then we started talking about will and estate planning and stuff like that. And I said, well, that was kind of brilliant on your end. Like, how'd you come up with that? And he's like, I just didn't trust you when I wrote that will. I just didn't. I mean, and he also said, like, he probably won't admit this, but he kind of mumbled, like, and plus I didn't think you'd make it to 50. And so, and he's exactly right. I mean, and it's still in there. They're like, should we change it? And I'm like, no, like, I'd rather see my mom and dad still around, and, hopefully I don't have to worry about any of that. But there's something, even hearing you talk about it and everyone, there's something pride about, it's, I can only imagine if I was still in active addiction and had that hanging over. My oldest brother would have been the same. This would have been the same situation. I guarantee I'd have been lighting up his phone every 5 minutes trying to get that money. But, I think, I don't think it was foresight of my dad's. It was like, he just didn't trust me. That's where addiction takes me. And it's a good reminder. I still it solidifies my sobriety and recovery. And then I start thinking about that. And I make a few extra phone calls to people I met at meetings. I mean, it's amazing how this happens. Justin, talking about kind of executor and getting money, and you got someone in active addiction. How'd you handle it?
Well, I think that the brother, as the executor, can actually use some of that money to hire a professional to walk them through offering door number 2 to his sister. And
Good point.
He can actually also, in that process, let her know that it was some of the money that was, assigned to her that has been paying for this service. And that way she has some skin in the game. And you can actually, they don't have to, change their mind, and if she agrees and all that, use their own money for the services. But I think if you use some of that money that would only go to bad if she doesn't get help, towards offering her to get help, and then her knowing that there's a chance that that money can actually go back to her if she agrees to get help, could go a long way.
Kevin, you got your hands ready. This is the family whisperer. This is what Kevin gets excited about. This is Kevin. What do you got?
Well, I love what the guys have said so far. I totally agree with everything. The only thing I would amend it to, and this is just because I think I came from a family of wealth and means, not ridiculous, but my dad did really well, and money was always an issue. And the way I would lay it out is, if you want the money, you got to get sober, you got to stay sober. That's just the end of the story. I just would be like, no and no. And I would attach the disbursement of the funds to, getting sober and staying sober. That would be the boundary. No drugs, no alcohol. The accountability would be drug testing, breathalyzing, and then if you fail the test, you don't get any money. You don't get it all. Yeah, we're going to do like a lottery disbursement, and if you pass the test, great, you get the money. And it's money. It's black and white. Let's all be honest. When we were all using, the worst thing somebody could have done is handed us a large chunk of money.
It killed me.
Thank you. And I got a small chunk of money when I was 25, and it was gone. Gone. So I think that would be the worst thing you can do, is give this person cash. I think you just give it to them I've worked with enough families in regular family therapy where they're like, you can have the money, but you got to go to college, or you got to use it to buy a house. So it's okay to put those stipulations in. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's your money. You can do whatever the hell you want with it, and say, If you want my money, you got to stay sober. End of the story. You know, and
10 years or so ago, my folks called me one night and they said, hey, you know, when we've been doing some estate planning, and when we pass, we want you to be the executor of our will. And it kind of took me back, because I'm the black sheep of the family for sure. And first of all, my first thought was, there's an inheritance. And that was kind of a nice surprise. And then it was like, you guys know, I did a lot of cocaine and methamphetamines, right? Like, are you sure my siblings are going to be okay with that? And it was just, like you were saying, Kevin, it's just kind of a nice reinforcement of my own recovery that, you know, there's been some trust earned along the way. So, yeah.
My dad passed away 2 years ago, actually this week, now that I think about it. And my sister was the executor. And I mean, I was 30 years sober at that point. And it was still like, oh, hell no, he can't touch this. And I was like, what? Come on. I have a degree in economics. I'm successful.
I can relate to that. I can relate to that. You know, Kevin will go right to you. My mother went into treatment last week, but every day I'm getting calls from the facility stating my mom is wanting to leave. Our family has reiterated the need to finish if she wants a relationship, but this is an ongoing thing. It's you know, the holding of hostage.
Oh, we lost Matt. And I didn't do anything.
There I am.
Okay.
I had a Justin moment for a second.
I know, man. It's like Ghost in the Machine. I'm on.
So I'm just telling you guys, if I don't like what you're saying, you're out. I mean,
was I put in the corner for a second?
You gave me a look. I won't get into it.
Right,
you gave me a look. You know, don't do it again. Just Kevin,
I'll just sit here like this.
Great question. I get this question all the time. My favorite one, by the way, is we sent this kid to a freaking 5-star luxury resort treatment program. And the mom was like, he says the food is bad. And I was like, I've eaten there. It's great. Stop listening to him. And I call it summer camp syndrome. You know, when you send a kid to summer camp, the first week is like, this place sucks. I hate it. The people are awful. I don't belong here. And then you don't hear anything for a while. And then it's like, oh my God, these are the greatest people ever. I love these people. They're taking great care of me. So what I tell the family is I prepare them for this ahead of time. Hey, let me tell you something, what's going to happen. You're going to drop them in treatment, and then this is what's going to start. And here are the answers. When they say, when can I leave? The answer, and I actually did it today. I'm like, write this down. When the clinical team deems it appropriate, that's when you can leave. And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, that's the answer. That's the answer. You've put them in the hands of the professionals. Let the professionals do their job. Now, here's the next thing I always say is when they start calling you and giving you their list of complaints, the next thing you say is, okay, so what did your therapist say? What did the case manager say? What did your sponsor say? I want to know what they said. And they're almost always going to be like, well, I haven't talked to them, because the family dynamic is set up that they've always complained to you because they know you'll go into action to solve their problem and fix them. So that's why you're working with me, because I'm going to change that. You're not going to do that anymore. And so when they realize that brick wall is there, it's kind of like the last question. Once we all realized, our families were like, oh no, we're done. Then they're going to be like, oh, okay, I guess I got to grind. They're just testing to see if you'll give. So that's my thought process.
Is there anything what I latched onto and is calling this daughter every single day? Is there something that can be from the daughter's perspective, Kevin? Let me ask you this: can the daughter step in and say, like, I don't want these calls every single day. Let me tell her, like, you need to finish and don't stop calling me. Is that a step?
Absolutely. And there's a button on the phone when they call where you can say no to the phone call. And I know I'm being a little sarcastic and funny, but that's really, you can talk to the treatment center and say, hey, I don't want to take these calls anymore. I mean, I'm kind of surprised this person has access to the phone in the first week of treatment, but whatever. But you can also just don't take the call, you know, and if you keep doing that in repetition, an amazing thing happens. They stop calling, you know.
Well, I mean, it's still unclear whether she's actually calling or the treatment facility is, and maybe, whatever. Justin, you got client in treatment calling every day saying, I'm out.
Well, yeah. So my parents did not take my phone calls. My poor sister did for a couple of days. And then she must have had somebody like Kevin point out to her that she could let me know, I'm not taking these calls anymore. I joke that the treatment center I went to was like a maze, and if I could have figured out how to get back to the front door, I probably would have left. But every time I thought I was there, I wound up in either the cafeteria or the meditation center.
It's like a college campus.
Oh, I know. It has its own water tower. But, so that's, the personal experience. But I think, again, one of the perks of hopefully this show or having professionals involved is we make it very clear at the intervention. We're not asking that you go away for X amount of days. We're asking that you begin to get healthy. We are saying that we are also 24 hours or a week or a month ahead of you on being held accountable, getting healthy ourselves. And if you get off of the healthy train, the changes that we have shared that you may or may not view as consequences can just as easily go into effect on day 7 or day 18 as right now.
Matt, you got anything?
Yeah. Nobody leaves treatment without a better plan, or at least in their mind, a better plan than mine. Nobody's going to leave to intentionally go and become homeless or destitute. There's this expectation that if I create enough fear, there's going to be a reaction on my family's part. And that reaction is they're going to prevent me from being homeless. They're going to prevent me from being uncomfortable. And so, for that family, if the team's calling them saying, hey, your mom's thinking about leaving, I would coach them to say, okay, I get that she has that choice. What's her plan? Why am I a part of this conversation? Because she's not coming here. My relationship with her is in suspense until she completes treatment. And so she's welcome to leave, but what does that mean for her? Does she have a plan for how she's going to take care of herself if she's relying on the family? Like, I don't understand why there's an obligation that's implied on my part that if she leaves treatment, that suddenly I have to step into action, because that's not going to happen. And so to really create that boundary, and it doesn't have to be harsh, but to be able to say, okay, yeah, even if you're talking to one of your children, I get, okay, let's talk about that. So you're going to leave treatment. What's going to happen from there? Where are you going to stay tonight? How are you going to eat? Because, my desire is to support you while you're in treatment and getting well. And so if that's not some support that you want, I'd love to know what your plan is. And most of the time the response is, oh, you mean you're not going to buy me a plane ticket home? Okay. Well, I guess maybe I'm going to stay here then, because that reaction, that fear-based reaction wasn't there. And instead it's been replaced by this confident curiosity. Like, okay, so tell me what your plan is. That changes the dynamic of the relationship. It lets that person know, hey, I'm not going to be held hostage by this anymore. This expectation that you somehow implied in this conversation that I'm going to jump into action to keep you from being uncomfortable, that's gone. So now let's talk about how you're going to solve this problem that you are creating for yourself. Because what I coach families to do is we have got to fire the banker and we've got to fire the janitor. You got to stop enabling the problem and you got to stop cleaning up the problem after it's been made. And what that person is expecting is, okay, the janitor's still on the payroll here, so I'm going to make a mess and they're going to come clean it up. And when you abandon those roles, that person gets to feel the responsibility for whatever crisis they're about to create for themselves.
Well done. Well done, Matt.
I want to add one more thing. So I had a counselor call me on a Sunday night and apologize for calling me, but wanted to give me a heads up that, the patient had been put on a 24-hour hold to try and change their mind, but he was going to leave AMA. And I said, I would much rather get that phone call than a phone call, Monday morning at 10 a.m. from the parents going, he left. And with that information, and that guy did leave, but with that information, when he got his phone back and was taking the Uber to the airport, he opened it up, and there were text messages from all of his friends that had been at the intervention, his parents, saying, we're not going to fall back into the janitor or banker. And he actually turned around and went back to the treatment center.
Well done. Well done. Bert, looks like Bert wants in.
He says that you can always say, I love you, and the answer is no.
Jesus. Well, gentlemen, you did well. Gold star for all you guys. You guys did well. This is one of the longest shows I think we've ever done. But you know what? We do this every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central. Right in the questions. We got 0 questions today.
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments here. I didn't see anybody jumping in.
We got 0 comments, but I take that personal. So I will fight the rest of the night to find my self-worth. So
I had somebody on Facebook reach out to me today to ask if we were going to do this show. So Meredith, I'm talking to you. I want to see some questions. All right. You got to send us in some questions. Let's be interactive here.
way to put someone on the spot there. We can shame them.
Absolutely. I mean, at least I didn't use their last name, but Meredith, you know who you are. Come on.
Man,
Guilt and shame. Using those ACA roots. I love it.
we appreciate anyone watching, but thank you so much. I'm not going to call anyone out, but guys, thanks again. We'll do this again next week. InterventionOnCall.com for any more information. See our lovely bios. Go check it out. InterventionOnCall.com. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jay.